You know what's funny about revenge? Everyone tells you it's not worth it, that it won't make you feel better, that the best revenge is living well. They're wrong. My name is Sophia Martinez, and this is the story of how I went from sleeping on park benches to owning an entire town. How I transformed from a broken, homeless girl into the woman who held my stepmother's entire world in the palm of my hand. This isn't a fairy tale. There's no prince, no magic wand, and no fairy godmother. Just me, my father's legacy, and a burning desire for justice that kept me alive when I had nothing else. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever lost everything and had to claw your way back, if you've ever dreamed of making those who hurt you understand exactly what they took from you, this story is for you. But I need to warn you, this gets dark before it gets light. And the ending? Well, let's just say karma isn't just a concept. Sometimes she's a 28-year-old woman in an Armani suit holding the deed to everything you love. I was 21 when my father died. Not suddenly. Cancer doesn't work that way. It's slow, methodical, and cruel. It gives you just enough time to say goodbye, but never enough time to prepare for the emptiness that follows. My father, Marcus Martinez, was a real estate appraiser. Not glamorous, not wealthy, but honest. God, he was so honest it hurts sometimes. In a world of inflated valuations and under-the-table deals, my father was the man who told the truth, even when it cost him clients. Sophia, he'd tell me during those long afternoons when I'd sit with him while he worked, numbers don't lie. People do. Markets do. But if you learn to read the patterns, if you understand what the numbers are really saying, you'll never be lost. He'd show me property assessments, market trends, and neighborhood developments. While other girls my age were at parties, I was learning to spot gentrification before it happened, to see which neighborhoods were on the rise, and to predict market crashes by reading between the lines of economic reports. It's not magic, he'd say, his eyes twinkling. It's just paying attention. I didn't know then that he was giving me a superpower. I thought he was just being dad. He married Victoria when I was 19. I should have seen it coming. The way she'd appeared so conveniently after my mother's death 3 years earlier, how she'd been so attentive, so caring, so perfect. My father was lonely. I was away at community college, trying to build something of myself. He was alone in that house, surrounded by memories of my mother, drowning in grief he never let me see. Victoria was beautiful in that calculated way. Every hair in place, every outfit carefully chosen, every word measured. She was 42 to his 56, and she looked at our modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs like it was a stepping stone. I tried to warn him. God, I tried. Dad, something's off about her. The way she asks about your assets, about the house, about your insurance. He'd just shake his head sadly. Sophia, not everyone is out to get something. Sometimes people just love. I shut up after that because I could see it in his eyes. He needed this. He needed to believe that life could be good again, that love could find him twice, and that his story wasn't over. So I smiled at the wedding. I called her Victoria instead of Mom, because we both knew that's not what this was. But I was civil, I was kind, I tried. And then, 8 months later, my father's cough that wouldn't go away turned into stage 4 lung cancer. He never smoked a day in his life. The funeral was on a Tuesday. It rained. Of course it rained. Isn't that what always happens in the movies? But this wasn't a movie. This was my father, the only person who truly understood me, being lowered into the ground while I stood there, numb, feeling like someone had scooped out my insides and left me hollow. Victoria stood beside me, dry-eyed behind her Chanel sunglasses, accepting condolences with practiced grace. I should have known then. I should have seen it. But I was drowning in grief, and I didn't notice the shark circling. It took exactly 4 days. 4 days after we buried my father, Victoria called me into the living room, our living room. The room where my father taught me to read, where we'd watched movies on Friday nights, and where I'd cried on his shoulder when my high school boyfriend broke my heart. She was standing by the fireplace, and something about her posture, rigid, prepared, made my stomach drop. "Sophia, we need to talk about your living arrangements." I remember blinking, confused. "My what?" "This house." She gestured around with one perfectly manicured hand. "It's mine now. Your father left everything to me, as is proper between spouses, and I've decided to sell it." The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds, syllables without meaning. "Sell it? This is our home. Was your home," she corrected, her voice as cold as January frost. "Past tense. I've already accepted an offer. We close in 3 weeks. You'll need to be out by then." "Out? Victoria, where am I supposed to go? I'm still in school. I work part-time. I can't afford." "That's not my problem." She examined her nails. "You're 21, Sophia, an adult. Your father coddled you far too long. It's time you learn to stand on your own feet." Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest. Coddled me? He was my father. He loved me. "And he loved me, too," she said, finally meeting my eyes. And what I saw there made my blood run cold. Nothing, absolutely nothing, like looking into the eyes of a doll. He showed that love by leaving me everything. Perhaps that should tell you something about your relationship. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit her. I wanted to shake her and make her see what she was doing, what she was taking from me. Instead, I heard my voice, small and broken. "Please, just give me time. Let me finish the semester at least. I'll pay rent. No. Simple, final. 3 weeks, Sophia. I suggest you start packing." I spent the next 3 weeks in a fog. I packed my life into boxes, clothes, books, and the few pieces of jewelry my mother left me. I held my father's favorite sweater and sobbed into it until I couldn't breathe. I called friends, but I'd been so focused on school and taking care of my father during his illness that those friendships had faded. I wish I could help, but my roommate situation. Maybe just for a few days, but have you tried a shelter? I looked into apartments, but on my part-time barista salary, in this market, I'd need the first month, last month, and security deposit. I had maybe $800 to my name. I went to Victoria one last time, 2 days before I had to be out. "Please," I said, and I'm not ashamed to say I begged. "I'll do anything. I'll clean, I'll cook, and I'll pay you back every cent once I graduate and get a real job. Please don't do this." She smiled, actually smiled. "Oh, Sophia, you still don't understand, do you? I don't want your money. I don't want you here. I never did. You were just part of the package, an unfortunate accessory that came with your father. But now," she shrugged, "now I don't have to pretend anymore. It's really quite liberating." "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "Why did you marry him if you didn't love him?" "Love?" She laughed, and it was like breaking glass. "Darling, your father was a means to an end. A comfortable life, a house, a nest egg. And now that I've got what I needed, I'm moving on. I've already found a lovely place in Millbrook Heights. Do you know it? Probably not. It's where people with actual money live." Millbrook Heights. Even in my devastated state, I knew the name. An affluent small town about 2 hours north where the median home price was over $2 million. Old money, new money, all the money. "How?" I asked. "The house is worth maybe $400,000, and after the mortgage—" "Oh, sweetie," her smile widened. "Did you really think this house was all your father had? He had life insurance, quite a lot of it, actually. $500,000 to be exact, all left to his loving wife." The room spun. $500,000.
Money that should have secured my education, my future. Money my father had paid into for years, probably thinking it would protect me if anything happened to him. And Victoria had it all. "Now get out of my house," she said pleasantly. "You have 48 hours.
I spent my first night homeless on a bench in Riverside Park. It was May, thank God, not cold enough to kill me at least. I had my backpack with clothes, my laptop, my phone charger, and about $300 after buying some essentials. The rest of my belongings were in a storage unit I could afford for exactly 2 months. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound made me jump. Footsteps, voices, the rustle of leaves. I'd never been so aware of my own vulnerability, my own insignificance in the vast, indifferent city. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed obscene in their beauty, I made a decision. I wasn't going to die here. I wasn't going to let Victoria win. I was going to survive, and somehow, some way, I was going to make her pay. But first, I needed money. I spent that first day in the public library. Free Wi-Fi, free bathrooms, and free air conditioning. I created a profile on every freelance website I could find. I had skills, I realized. My father had taught me to analyze property values, to understand market trends, and to read economic indicators. I started offering real estate market analysis services, cheap at first, $50 for a neighborhood assessment, $100 for a market trend report. I undercut everyone, worked 18-hour days, and delivered reports that were so detailed and so accurate that clients started coming back. And something strange happened. I was good at this, really good, better than I'd ever realized when it was just an afternoon activity with my father. Maybe it was desperation sharpening my mind. Maybe it was having nothing to lose. But I could look at a neighborhood and see its future. I could read a market report and spot the trends everyone else missed. I predicted a crash in the downtown luxury condo market 3 weeks before it happened. I identified an up-and-coming neighborhood that tripled in value within 6 months. I called a commercial real estate boom in the industrial district that made my clients thousands. Word spread. My rates went up. 50 became 100, which became 500, which became 1,000. But I was still sleeping in parks, in 24-hour diners, and in the library bathroom when the security guard wasn't looking. 3 months in, a client named Robert Chen found me. He was a real estate investor in his mid-40s, sharp-eyed and sharper-suited. He'd hired me to analyze a potential apartment building purchase. My report had saved him from a money pit and identified a better opportunity that netted him $200,000 in profit. He asked to meet me in person. I showed up at the coffee shop in my cleanest clothes, my hair washed in a gym bathroom I'd snuck into, trying to look like I had my life together. He took one look at me and said, "When's the last time you had a real meal?" I burst into tears. I told him everything. Victoria, the house, living on the streets. I don't know why. Maybe because he was the first person in months to look at me like I was human, not just a problem to be avoided. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't judge. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I have a proposition for you." Robert Chen didn't just give me a job. He gave me a future. "You have a gift," he told me over that coffee that turned into lunch, that turned into a 5-hour conversation about real estate markets and economic trends. "A genuine gift for reading markets, but you're wasting it on freelance reports. Work for me. Be my market analyst. I'll pay you $60,000 a year to start, with bonuses based on the accuracy of your predictions." $60,000? I'd been living on maybe $8,000 a year, scraping by on cheap food and cheaper accommodations. "There's a catch," he continued. "You work exclusively for me. Every prediction, every analysis, every insight, it's mine. And you work hard, harder than you've ever worked. I need someone hungry, someone driven, someone with something to prove." I looked him in the eye. I'm not just hungry, I'm starving. And I don't just have something to prove, I have someone to destroy. He smiled. Good. When can you start? Right now. That was 4 years ago. Robert wasn't kidding about working hard. I put in 80, 90-hour weeks. I analyzed every property, every market, and every trend. I predicted booms and busts, identified opportunities, and avoided disasters. And I was right. Not always, nobody's perfect, but I was right enough that Robert's portfolio grew exponentially. My first year, I made him $4 million in profit. My bonus was $50,000. I didn't spend it on luxuries. I spent it on education, online courses in real estate investment, property law, and market economics. I devoured knowledge like I was starving, because I was starving for the tools I'd need to build what I was planning. My second year, I made Robert $8 million. My bonus was $200,000. I started investing myself, small at first, a duplex in an emerging neighborhood, a commercial space I knew would triple in value. I was conservative and careful, but I was building. My third year, I made Robert $15 million. My bonus was $500,000. I bought my first apartment building, 20 units in a neighborhood I knew was about to explode. I renovated, raised rents carefully, and sold it 18 months later for 3 times what I paid. People started to notice me. Sophia Martinez, the market whisperer, the woman who could see around corners, who knew where money would flow before it started moving. I was featured in real estate investment magazines. I spoke at conferences. I was offered partnerships, positions, and opportunities. I turned them all down because I wasn't building a career. I was building a weapon. My fourth year, I made Robert $22 million. My bonus was $1 million. And I finally had enough. Enough money, enough knowledge, enough power. It was time to find Victoria. I hired a private investigator. It took him 3 days. She was living in Millbrook Heights, just like she'd said, a beautiful colonial in the historic district, worth about $1.8 million. She'd married again, a retired executive named Harold Pemberton, a widower, 72 years old, and worth about $8 million. Of course she had. I studied Millbrook Heights like a general studying a battlefield. Population, 12,000. Median income, $180,000. Main street with boutique shops, artisan cafes, and a farmer's market every Saturday. 3 schools, all highly rated. 1 hospital, 1 country club. Old money and new money living side by side in carefully maintained harmony. And Victoria, right in the middle of it all, playing Lady of the Manor. I spent 6 months analyzing every property, every business, and every economic indicator in Millbrook Heights. I identified the key players, who owned what, who had influence, and who was vulnerable. And then I started buying. I spent $14.2 million over those 2 years. Every property was cash flowing. Every business was profitable. I wasn't just buying real estate. I was building an empire that would sustain itself, grow itself, and most importantly, give me absolute control over the world Victoria had chosen to inhabit. Robert noticed, of course. He was too smart not to. "You're building something," he said one day, studying my portfolio. "Something specific. This isn't just investment strategy. This is personal." I didn't lie to him. He'd earned my honesty. "There's someone who destroyed my life," I told him. "Someone who took everything from me when I was vulnerable. She's living in Millbrook Heights now, comfortable and happy, never thinking about the girl she threw away like garbage." "And you're going to—" "I'm going to own her world," I said simply, "every piece of it. And then I'm going to let her know exactly who holds the strings." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you need help?" I smiled. "I've got this, but thank you." "Sophia," he leaned forward, "be careful. Revenge has a way of consuming people. Don't let it destroy what you've built." "It won't," I promised, "because I'm not doing this out of hate. I'm doing this for justice. There's a difference." I'm not sure I believed that then. I'm not sure I believe it now. But it didn't matter. I was too far gone to stop. It's been 7 years since Victoria threw me out, year 2 of my Millbrook Heights acquisition strategy. I started spending more time in town, not hiding, not lurking, just being present, having coffee at the shop I owned, eating lunch at the restaurant I owned, working from the hotel I owned. People started to recognize me. "Oh, you're the new owner of the Grandview? What wonderful renovations you've done. I heard you bought the Riverside Apartments. Are you planning any updates?" I was charming, gracious, invested in the community. I sponsored the high school's theater program. I donated to the library. I showed up at town council meetings with thoughtful suggestions about economic development. I became, in short, exactly the kind of wealthy benefactor that Millbrook Heights loved. And then, 6 months into my public presence in Millbrook Heights, it happened. I was at a charity auction at the Grandview, my hotel, though most people there didn't know I owned it. The event was raising money for the Children's Hospital, and the town's elite had turned out in force. I was examining the silent auction items when I heard a voice behind me. "The sculpture is hideous, but the artist is the mayor's wife, so everyone's bidding anyway." I turned, and there she was, Victoria. She'd aged well. Money does that. Her hair was professionally highlighted, and her face was carefully maintained with what I suspected was regular Botox. She wore a dress that cost more than I used to make in a month back when I was sleeping in parks. She was looking at me with polite interest, the way wealthy people look at other wealthy people they haven't met yet, assessing, categorizing, and deciding if I was worth knowing. She didn't recognize me. 7 years. 7 years since she'd thrown me out, and she didn't recognize me. I was 21, broken, and desperate. Now I was 28, polished, and powerful. My hair was professionally styled. I wore designer clothes. I carried myself with the confidence of someone who owned half the town. I was invisible to her, just another wealthy woman in a room full of them. "Sophia Martinez," I said, extending my hand. "I'm new to Millbrook Heights. Well, relatively new." "Victoria Pemberton," she replied, shaking my hand with the brief, firm grip of someone who's shaken 1,000 hands at 1,000 events. "Welcome to our little community. What brings you to Millbrook Heights?" "Real estate investment," I said smoothly. "I've acquired several properties here. The town has such potential." "Oh, how wonderful!" Her smile was practiced, perfect. "We love people who invest in our community. Are you planning to settle here permanently?" "I'm considering it," I said. "I've fallen in love with the town. Everyone's been so welcoming." We chatted for a few more minutes, meaningless small talk about the town, the weather, and the charity auction. She mentioned her husband Harold, her book club, and her volunteer work. She mentioned none of it with any real warmth. It was all performance, all carefully constructed image, just like it had been with my father. "Well, I hope to see you around," she said finally, already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. "Welcome to Millbrook Heights, Sophia." She walked away, and I stood there, champagne glass in hand, watching her work the room. She had no idea. No idea that the homeless girl she'd discarded was now the woman who owned her favorite hotel, her favorite coffee shop, and her favorite restaurant. The woman who owned the building where her husband's wealth manager worked. The woman owned the apartments where half her friends lived. She had no idea that the net was already around her, tightening slowly, invisibly. And God help me, the feeling was intoxicating. It took another 6 months to acquire the final pieces. The building that housed Victoria's favorite boutique, the property where her book club president lived, the commercial space that Harold's old business partner rented for his consulting firm, and finally, the piece I'd been waiting for, the colonial house 3 doors down from Victoria's own home. The owners were moving to Florida and wanted a quick sale, and I paid above market value to ensure I got it. Now I owned property on her street. Now I was her neighbor. I moved in on a Saturday. Victoria was outside gardening, or rather directing her gardener, when the moving truck arrived. She looked up, curious, and then her face lit up with recognition. Sophia, what a wonderful surprise! Are you moving to the neighborhood? I am, I said, walking over with a warm smile. I fell so in love with Millbrook Heights that I decided to make it permanent. And when this house came on the market, I couldn't resist. How marvelous! She pulled off her gardening gloves. We'll be neighbors. We'll be neighbors. You must come to dinner once you're settled. I'll introduce you to everyone who matters. I'd love that, I said, and I meant it. Because dinner at Victoria's house, sitting at her table, drinking her wine, meeting her friends, all while knowing what I knew, owning what I owned, was going to be delicious. Over the next 3 months, I became part of Victoria's social circle. I attended her book club. I joined her at charity events. I had coffee with her friends. I was invited to her dinner parties. And all the while, I was making final preparations. I hired a team of lawyers. I organized all my property holdings under a single entity, Martinez Holdings LLC. I prepared documentation showing every property I owned in Millbrook Heights, every business, every building. And then, on a cold November evening, I invited Victoria to my house for tea. "What a lovely home you've made," Victoria said, settling into my sofa with her tea. "You have exquisite taste, Sophia." "Thank you," I said. I learned from someone who valued beautiful things. We chatted for a while, more meaningless small talk. Then I set down my teacup. "Victoria, there's something I need to tell you." She looked at me curiously. "Oh? I haven't been entirely honest with you about who I am." Her smile faltered slightly. "I don't understand." "My full name is Sophia Martinez," I said slowly. "My father was Marcus Martinez. He was a real estate appraiser. He died 7 years ago of lung cancer." I watched the color drain from her face. "He was married," I continued, my voice steady, "to a woman named Victoria, who threw his daughter out of her home 4 days after the funeral, and who took everything, the house, the life insurance, everything, and left that daughter homeless and alone." Her teacup slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the hardwood floor, tea spreading like blood. "Sophia," she whispered. "Little Sophia?" "Not so little anymore," I said. She stood up, stumbling backward. You can't, I don't." "Sit down, Victoria." My voice was cold. "We're not done." She sat. She had no choice. The woman who'd once thrown me out with such casual cruelty was now in my home, in my world, and she was beginning to understand just how completely the tables had turned. I pulled out a folder, thick, heavy, and full of documents. "Do you know what this is?" I asked. She shook her head, mute. "This is a list of every property I own in Millbrook Heights. The Riverside Apartments, where your friend Margaret lives, the Millbrook Professional Center, where Harold's wealth manager works, the Grand View Inn, where you host your book club, the coffee shop, where you meet your friends every Tuesday, the boutique where you buy your clothes, and the restaurant where you celebrated your anniversary last month." I pulled out page after page, laying them on the coffee table between us. "I own 43 properties in this town, Victoria, commercial buildings, apartment complexes, and businesses. I own the fabric of Millbrook Heights. And do you know what that means?" "No," she whispered. "It means I own your world." I sat down across from her, leaning forward. "Every place you shop, I own. Every place you eat, I own. Every place you socialize, I own. Your friends' apartments, I'm their landlord. Your favorite stores, I'm their landlord. The country club's administrative offices, I own the building." I could raise rents tomorrow. I could refuse to renew leases. I could make this town very uncomfortable for you, Victoria. I could make your perfect little life here fall apart piece by piece. She was crying now, mascara running down her carefully maintained face. "Why?" she sobbed. "Why are you doing this?" "Why?" I stood up. "You threw me into the street. You took everything my father left,
everything that should have secured my future, and you used it to build this perfect life while I slept on park benches. You looked me in the eye and told me I was just an unfortunate accessory you didn't have to pretend to care about anymore. You destroyed me, Victoria. Or you tried to, but I didn't break. I built myself back up, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. And now I'm here, and I own everything you love. Please, she begged. Please, I'm sorry. I was cruel. I was horrible. You were evil, I corrected. You married my father for his money, pretended to love him while he was dying, and then discarded his daughter like trash the moment he was gone. I walked to the window, looking out at the perfect suburban street. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my back to her. You're going to sell your house. You're going to leave Millbrook Heights. You're going to go somewhere far away and start over, just like I had to. But Harold is 72 years old with a heart condition, I said, turning to face her. Do you really think he'll stay with you when he learns the truth about what you did? When he learns that you married my dying father for his money? When he realizes you're the kind of person who throws a 21-year-old girl onto the streets? Her face crumpled. I'll tell him everything, Victoria. I'll tell everyone, unless you leave quietly. You have 30 days, I continued. The same amount of time you gave me. Seems fair, doesn't it? I have nowhere to go, she whispered. That's not my problem, I said, echoing her words from 7 years ago. You're an adult, Victoria. Time to stand on your own feet. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. What happened to you? She asked. You were such a sweet girl. Your father would be horrified. Don't. My voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare talk about my father. You don't get to use his memory as a weapon. He would be proud of me, proud that I survived what you did to me, proud that I built something from nothing, and proud that I didn't let you win. I walked to the door and opened it. 30 days, Victoria, and then I never want to see you again. She stood on shaking legs, gathered her purse, and walked to the door. She paused there, looking at me one last time. I am sorry, she said quietly. For what it's worth, I am truly sorry. It's worth nothing, I replied, but at least now you know how it feels. She left. I closed the door and stood there, shaking, tears finally falling. It was done. That was 3 months ago. Victoria left Millbrook Heights 2 weeks after our conversation. Quietly, quickly, with a story about wanting to be closer to family in Arizona. Harold stayed. It turned out he was more attached to the town than to his wife. They're divorcing now. I still own 43 properties in Millbrook Heights. My portfolio is worth over $30 million. I'm 28 years old, financially independent, and more successful than I ever dreamed possible. And I'm empty. Robert was right. Revenge doesn't fill the hole. It doesn't bring back what you lost. It doesn't heal the wounds. I got my justice. I made Victoria feel a fraction of what she made me feel. I won. But my father is still gone. Those years I spent homeless, afraid, struggling, I can't get them back. The innocence I lost, the trust that was shattered, Victoria's exile doesn't restore those things. So what now? I'm building something new. A foundation in my father's name, helping young people who've been thrown out by their families, providing housing, education support, and job training, turning my pain into something that helps others. I'm also selling some of my Millbrook Heights properties. Not all. I've grown to love the town, and I'm keeping my home here. But I don't need to own everything anymore. I don't need that control. I got my revenge, and now I'm trying to figure out how to live with it. People ask me if I regret it. I wish I'd taken the high road,
forgiven Victoria and moved on without confronting her? Honestly, I don't know. I know I'm not proud of the satisfaction I felt watching her break down. I know my father would have wanted me to be better than this. But I also know that sometimes the people who hurt us need to face consequences, that justice matters, that standing up for yourself, even years later, even in ways that aren't pretty or noble, sometimes that matters too. I'm Sophia Martinez. I went from homeless to owning a town. I got my revenge. And now I'm trying to figure out what comes after revenge. If you've been through something similar, if you've been betrayed, abandoned, left with nothing, I want you to know you can survive this. You can build yourself back up. You can become stronger than you ever imagined. Just remember that revenge, even when it's justified, comes with a price. Make sure you're willing to pay it. Sometimes the best revenge is turning your pain into someone else's hope. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it's not a typical happy ending. Life rarely is. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share your own stories in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, you're stronger than you think. Whatever you're going through, whatever darkness you're facing, you can survive it. You can thrive.